I think the most important thing was that the community in Holborn and St Pancras and Camden more broadly was really engaged from the outset. And of course, having your own local MP as the person who's running for Prime Minister obviously helps that and motivates people. And as you suggest, it's much easier when the person is extraordinarily dislikable. I mean, within a week of the campaign, someone said to me in the community, at least Keir Starmer makes it easy for us. And I sort of looked at him and said, in what way? And he said, well, we don't have to try and figure out when he's lying, because every time his lips move, we know he's lying. And so when you have a figure like that, who has no politics, who is simply obsessed with power for power's sake and for what it does for him personally, it is easier to mobilize a community. But I think what struck me is the diversity of the community that was mobilized, because Camden, obviously it's a London borough, but it has huge wealth inequalities within the borough. We have one of the highest rates of child poverty, which is an astonishing thing to think about. And even today, one of the sort of difficulties after the election is because Keir Starmer has been such an absent MP for almost 10 years now. People think I'm their MP. So if I'm going to the shops, people come up to me and want to tell me about their problems and ask me how I'm going to solve them for them. And I have to try and explain that I have limited means at my disposal, because our MP is actually the person who's the Prime Minister and creating a lot of the problems they're talking about. And it really does amaze me. So we have people across class lines, obviously across social, racial, religious lines in the constituency. And I think the most important thing about that is to ensure that we keep people enjoyably, as both Nandita and Jamie emphasized, enjoyably engaged. And we're in the process of establishing something called the Camden Community Alliance. And a lot of the people who are involved in the campaign are again involved in building a more permanent community alliance in Camden. Let me start with the issue of the media. There's a very interesting example, and that is the Swedish Left Party. So the mainstream media either just didn't cover them or misrepresented what they did. And what they've done is they've effectively built their own media. So what they do is the Central Party creates a national paper every week, and then that is sent to the local parties, who adjust the national content for what is relevant to them, leave out what they think is not, and then include a whole lot of local stuff along with that. But it also includes sport, culture, and everything else that people are interested in. And it's not branded as the Left Party newspaper, it's just branded as another newspaper. And they've been incredibly successful in the distribution of this, both electronically and on paper. And of course, we have to keep on hitting home at the establishment media. We have to keep on using social media, which has all of the advantages and disadvantages that we all know about. But I just want to make the point that I think nothing replaces the engagement with local communities. And we've heard even just in this session about the range of work that is going on at local areas. And I think what we need to do is we need to ensure that these community initiatives are linked to a national electoral party, because there is obviously such logic to them, because you challenge your council and I would argue your MP locally, but then you also in parallel challenge them electorally when the opportunity arises. So the electoral dimension of it is really an extension of that community strategy. But what is also so crucial about that is that it doesn't matter how good our policies are. People are going to see another party as, oh my goodness, it's just the same old political stuff again. Whereas if you're actually working in those communities and doing things for those communities, the perception of the entity that you establish will be fundamentally different from the perception of the other political entities. And I'm going to conclude by saying the one example we never look at is the most successful left-wing party in Europe today, which is the PTB, the Workers' Party of Belgium, which has gone to being this really marginal little Maoist entity that had no consequence in Belgium whatsoever, to going in the last elections across Belgium's myriad legislatures, which I can never keep track of, has gone from having 5 representatives to having 248 representatives, making it the second biggest party in Belgium. And what characterizes the PTB? Yes, of course, very solid left-wing principles and policies, and they are far left. But more importantly, they have had legal clinics and free health clinics in all of the areas where they run electorally. And that's taken them a long time. So I think finally, let me say, people shouldn't be downhearted. I think the fact that there are so many initiatives at the moment politically is brilliant. I think what the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks need to bring is how we bring together all of these various initiatives into a movement that is rooted in our communities, but has massive impact electorally, locally, and nationally, because the country, and I would argue the world, has never needed it as badly as it does now. I think the most important thing we can do is just talk to people on the ground, people who don't share our views, people who believe that the Nigel Farages of this world are part of the solution rather than the problem, and talk to them in very immediate terms about why the problems exist and why Farage et al. Are a part of the problem, not the solution. I had the experience in Northampton where all people spoke about was, it was a quite right-wing group I was speaking to, and all they were speaking about was immigrants and migrants, how they've ruined everything. And I listened to this for about 15 minutes, and then I said, I'm an immigrant. And a whole lot of them said, no, you can't be. And I said, what do you mean I can't be? And they said, well, you're white. And I had to explain to them what immigration and migrancy was. And it came as a shock to them. And then once we'd got over that, someone started shouting, well, the Jews control everything. And then someone else shouted them down and said, no, it's the Muslims who control everything. And rather than getting angry and attacking them at a sort of a moral level, I just said, well, for your information, I just so happen to be Jewish and married to a Muslim woman. And my children were described as Muslims when they were born in South Africa when I was still an MP. The reality is we control nothing. And sometimes you've got to find areas where you can just talk to people in a very immediate, person-to-person way and deal with some of the prejudices that have been built up. Because politicians, and we've seen it more and more over the years, use prejudice, they use hatred, and they use difference and othering to divide us. And our responsibility is in our tens of thousands. We need to get out on the streets across this country and be talking to people about the realities of the situation we all find ourselves in, the reasons for it, and what the solutions might be.